Hello, welcome to my channel, Vinit Masram.
Thank you, Sucharita. I'm really glad to be here one more time.
For those of you who are not aware, this is Vinit Masram, the voice behind Cinema Beyond Entertainment, जिसके चैनल को देख देख के लोगों ने अपने YouTube करियर शुरू करके पता नहीं कहाँ कहाँ पहुंच गए हैं और विनित है जिसने पता नहीं कब से वीडियो नहीं डाला है. कब डाला था लास्ट वीडियो?
January, first week of January. I'm working on the second one. It's taking a lot longer because I'm biting more than I can chew with this one. So
Speaking of biting more than we can chew, today we're doing the cinematic universe of Christopher Nolan because Oppenheimer is around the corner. It is releasing on my birthday, that is 20th of July. And Vinit and I are both Christopher Nolan fans. And हमने ऐसे ही randomly कुछ हफ्तों पहले decide किया कि अब हम सारी फिल्में देखेंगे नोलन की बैठ के दोबारा और डिस्कस करेंगे बिकॉज करते हैं हम ऐसे काम. हमने पॉल थॉमस एंडरसन के लिए भी किया था. ये शुरू करें विनित, टेनेट से स्टार्ट करें. टेनेट से बिकॉज हम फैंस हैं, हम लीनियर ऑर्डर में तो जाएंगे नहीं, इधर उधर चलता रहेगा.
बिल्कुल नहीं, ऐसे तौहीन हो जाएगी नोलन की.
कर भी नहीं सकते. करेक्ट. तो हम टेनेट से स्टार्ट करते हैं. आई हैव वॉच्ड इट नाउ 3 times आई थिंक एंड आई डोंट थिंक दैट फुली अंडरस्टैंड इट. डिड यू अंडरस्टैंड इट इन द फर्स्ट व्यूइंग?
No, I understood the basic plot. I understood like surface mechanism. But if you ask me, did I understand the movie? I would say no, still not.
अभी तक समझ नहीं आई है? Not yet.
No. I also have seen it thrice. I've seen it in the cinemas only once. From Batman Begins, that's the only Nolan film I've seen it only once because it released during COVID. Theaters
That's
weren't
right.
open completely. And I saw it in the IMAX Malad INOX. It was a great IMAX experience. But then 2/3 into the movie, I gave up. In a sense, like to make sense of the film.
I did not understand a thing in the first viewing. It made me feel really stupid. But then it also, I was committed to like trying to understand it, but I didn't revisit it until recently. I watched it a second and a third time. What is your understanding of the film now? What is Tenet and what is it about?
At a core level, if you look at it as a more like a Bond movie,
Yeah.
it starts to make very much sense and it's a very plot driven film. It's a plot heavy film. Hardly any character development to the point that the main character doesn't even have a name.
That's right.
So in a sense, like he's deliberately asking you not to invest
in the characters
and look at it in terms of the concept and the plot. And once I sort of got into the plot, and if I start, you can get into the mechanism of the plot the more you start to investigate it. At this moment, I understand the plot enough to make sense of the movie. But then if you ask the question, what is she trying to say with it? I'm not sure very much.
Yeah.
What is the point of the film? It felt very generic in terms of the end of the world mission. And you have a protagonist who's the only person who's going to save the entire world. And he's the one who's going to start. It's very much like Terminator. It's very much like Back to the Future.
But it's an anti-war film, no? For him, he's saying like, I'm trying to prevent World War III and everybody is like, we have to stop before it's too late and all of that shit, right? Because when we go into the future with the film as well, it's pretty much like post-apocalyptic looking and deliberately like people have to wear oxygen masks and things like that in the alternative backward reality of things, and it's made to look very post-apocalyptic. It's made to look like it's happening on a in wasteland, which it is happening in wasteland, but it is an anti-war film essentially. Along with discussing time, Christopher Nolan also very much likes to discuss gravity and the effect of gravity as a force that we don't understand. And here as well, all the inverted objects defy gravity, no?
Yes.
The bullet flying upward, and we'll talk about that more in Interstellar. But tell me, did you know when Nolan came to Bombay to shoot the film?
I had no idea. I got the first thing I got to know about anything regarding his connection with India with the film was Dimple Kapadia's casting was announced.
So great, she's so good.
I was like, damn, that is something. But I had no idea that it would be shooting in Bombay. If I did, I would have definitely watched the set.
She is telling him about Oppenheimer in the end, in the final scene, which I had completely forgotten. And I watched it again and I was like, oh, fuck,
yeah. Even when I was rewatching the film for this entire thing, I was like, there's an interesting connection. So I'm 100% sure he was working on the script way earlier.
He said in his interviews that Oppenheimer has been on his mind for many, many years. So it was just one of those things.
Okay, I have a very love-hate relationship with Nolan. There are certain aspects of his filmography that I absolutely love. I will fight with anybody for that. But there are certain aspects I absolutely like. I give up on those. Nolan has a huge exposition problem.
Yes.
And no, Tenet's my biggest contention with Tenet has always been he outrightly says at the very beginning of the film, when the protagonist is trying to understand this whole entire inverted bullet thing. So it's like he's struggling as much as we are struggling to understand him.
So the
And this,
scientist has to basically explain everything that's going on in that scene.
but she says, don't try to understand it, feel it. And I'm like, fantastic. Okay, I will now try to feel it. And from right after that, she starts explaining everything again. I'm like, don't do that. I'm like, pick one. Either explain me everything or just ask me to feel everything.
He has to explain, no? Because in interviews, actors themselves have said that they don't understand what they are making. Is there merit in making movies like that, that the people who are part of the film also don't understand what you're making?
It's a difficult question. In a sense, like, yes, you do want to make challenging narratives that goes beyond your cookie cutter, quote unquote, blockbuster stuff. These challenging narratives are okay and very, very much welcomed when we see these in those so-called art movies.
Yeah.
And avant-garde films. We don't question the challenging narrative where you don't understand everything. We just assume, oh, that's a part of that sort of filmmaking language.
Yeah.
When it comes to blockbuster, we want everything to be explained and everything has to be a smooth ride. So I completely appreciate Nolan to bring that aspect of that avant-garde narrative into a blockbuster cinema. I totally get that. But then trust the audience also enough. It's like having your cake and eating it too. You want to have something that is very radical and something that is very challenging, but at the same time, at every step of the way, you want to explain everything, especially when it comes to movies and it's kind of film Nolan makes. It becomes too heady. You're trying to get and immerse yourself into the visual language of his film, but at the same time, you want to listen to everything and understand fully. There are too many senses at play here. And as an audience, you do start to get fatigued. I'm not even talking about the regular complaints about, oh, I can't hear the muddled dialogue and everything, because those are very deliberate. If Nolan doesn't want you to hear dialogues, he will mix it in that way. So that's not a problem either. It's just that it's the Dan Brown problem, or I should say, Da Vinci Code problem.
How dare you? How dare you compare Christopher Nolan to Dan Brown, Vinit?
No, I'm explaining the writing style. Writing style in a sense, like you want to run and explain everything at the same time. I'm like, sorry. He is a visual filmmaker and he's become a very good visual filmmaker over the years. So trust your visual filmmaking ability more than quote unquote studio system want you to do it. So not everything needs to be explained. Then it would be way more exciting if it didn't have that much explanation and allowed me to interpret.
I fully disagree with you. Even despite the exposition and everything, it is still close to impossible for me to understand, whose job is to watch movies and interpret them. And if I didn't understand, like, I know so many people who watched it, and most of the people who watched it were like, what is going on? So even agar wo utni exposition bhi nahi hoti, wo scientist nahi hoti, who may or may not be the scientist that they are talking about, in the film, throughout the film, right? They're talking about a scientist. So it may be her, may not be her, I don't know. अगर वो नहीं होती वहां पर तो वो भी नहीं समझ में आती फिल्म. But Tenet is another level of filmmaking that you don't understand, or storytelling that you're not quite comprehending. But to go back to Inception, which when released was also, now you watch Inception and you're like, अरे ये तो इतनी straightforward film है, because Christopher Nolan हमारे दिमाग को actively evolve कर दिया है. He has trained our minds to understand filmic language in a way that filmmakers had not encouraged us to do, in such a mainstream fashion that he has. Because when I went and rewatched Inception, I was like, why did I not understand this film when I watched it for the first time? Because when I did watch it all the years ago that it came out, and then now it feels like way too simple and almost like straightforward.
I know, right?
In your rewatch of Inception, what did you think?
Inception, I have seen too many times.
Too many times,
when it came out, I just loved the film. I loved the concept. I would say I understood it more or less in the first viewing. It was the second viewing where I said, like, okay, now I got the entire picture. This is one of his top shelf films. I became a quote unquote Nolan fan. Like most of the Nolan fans are still like of that level. I think I had reached that height when I saw Inception. Then it tapered down very much. In a sense, like Nolan proved with Inception that blockbuster cinema doesn't have to be down. Blockbuster cinema doesn't It can challenge your audience and can
Yeah.
still entertain, and you can get everything that you want from a regular summer blockbuster while also have your brain cells completely stimulated.
That's what I'm saying. Like Inception trained us for a different kind of cinematic experience that hadn't
Yeah,
existed before that. One of the things that really stood out for me when I was watching it again was how Christopher Nolan uses water in all his films. Like the first shot of Inception is at a beach, and it almost feels like an homage to that very famous shot from Planet of the Apes, where you
yeah,
see a half buried Statue of Liberty. He's
yeah.
woken up at this beach where we don't know what city he's in, what country he's in, and then everything unravels from that point. But how amazingly he uses water in all his movies, right? Whether it is Interstellar, whether it is Inception, Dunkirk,
That's
obviously
the
the whole movie
obviously, yeah.
hinges pretty much takes place on a beach and around water.
Yeah, fantastic, absolutely fantastic. But I think one of the things that is drastically missing, and you can see it if you watch Tenet and we just think about Inception and what made Inception work. Because for his time, it also was equally challenging narrative and equally challenging for the audience, especially the regular blockbuster audience. There's a heart of the film that lies between the relationship between Maul and Cobb. Absolutely missing from Tenet. That central relationship grounds the entire picture to a very focused narrative. We understand the motivations for Cobb to do what he's trying to do, and
Yeah.
the guilt that he's living with,
Yeah.
and why he can't go back. Every single narrative thread, every single decision that Cobb makes and the team makes, it one way or another connected to that one mistake that he made, which he did not even think
Was a mistake at
was
the
a
time.
mistake,
Put
right?
put incepting an idea into his wife's mind.
Yeah, and he did make it work, but he also failed at the same time.
Yeah.
Because that led to the entire devastation of his life and his family's life.
It's the Oppenheimer conflict again. No, he's doing something that he's excited to do at this moment, not
Yes,
thinking what it's going to lead to. And like Christopher Nolan
absolutely.
explores this so much in all his films in some shape or the other form.
When we watch any filmmaker's filmography, there are always certain nuggets that keep popping up
Again and
into
again.
again and again in every single film. Doing something in the moment without realizing the consequences of it,
Yeah.
which ultimately actually ends up becoming the film,
Yes.
is at the heart of Inception. And that aspect is clearly missing in Tenet. Like watching Tenet, I don't understand where's the heart of the film. I
Yeah.
understand the concept and the no matter how much I understand the granularity of the technical aspect of the way
The
time
film
moves
doesn't
and
speak
the
to
way,
me. Tenet doesn't speak to me.
yeah. Whereas Inception speaks to you at a human level, despite
Yeah.
all this heavy machinery of dream within a dream is going on. Despite being all those characters being some of them one-dimensional, some of them two-dimensional, still have a very coherent motivation and arc to their own narrative that helps me be grounded to the central thesis of the film.
And such a human conflict, right? Who are you when you go inside yourself? When you go inside yourself, because there's this facade and there's something that you think you are, but then there's actual reality that you've even hidden away from yourself that you're not willing to accept. And
Yes.
that's where Maul lives. That's where he's hidden away this wife of his that he feels responsible for killing off.
I remember it was the second time when I had gone to watch the film with my best friend, and we came out of the film, and my friend Mandar, he said, "You know what? Without Maul, this film doesn't exist."
Of course not. Yeah, she
And
is Inception.
exactly. And I was like, yeah, that's the gravity of that film. That's where the entire thesis lies. And
It is a movie about regret. It is a film
Yes.
about regret. The conflict
Yes.
of the film at the heart of it is regret.
Yeah. Can you go back into the dream? Yes, you are stealing thoughts and ideas or planting thoughts and ideas.
Yeah.
But ultimately, it's all has to do with, can you change the reality of what I had done in the past?
Coming back to your previous point, though, Inception has an even bigger exposition problem.
Oh,
Because
yeah.
he's
Absolutely.
explaining Inception more than he's explaining Tenet even. Every time Ariadne asks a question, Joseph Gordon-Levitt goes into like a lengthy explanation of how it works and Mr. Eames and everything, right? And it's a bit much. And then when the millionaire asks questions, everyone's explaining, etc., etc. This movie has a bigger exposition problem.
Absolutely. I'm like, I know every single team member's job in the film. Like Eames is a forger,
Yeah.
Ariadne is an architect,
Architect.
Cobb is the Mr. Charles who actually plants the idea. Whatever.
Yeah.
I still have no idea what Joseph Gordon-Levitt's character does.
Yeah, he's the guy who plugs everybody in.
I'm like, what is your job apart from giving exposition? Like, what is your actual what are you doing? Are you head of security? Because you fucked it up majorly in the first level itself.
I think he's HR. He's head of HR. Human Resource Department. His job is to orientation करानी है नए members की ना, सबको बताना है कि इस department में क्या होता है, इस department में क्या होता है.
I mean, apart from, I have still no idea what are you doing except for giving like lengthy expositions. If somebody knows, please, I've seen the film enough not to understand still. So if somebody can explain it to me, please.
His job is to carry out that one scene that has become the defining scene of his career in the rotating airport hangar. They shot the scene in a rotating airport hangar, which actually was rotating, and he was actually using practical lighting for that 360-degree set. Everybody knows that story. If you don't know that story, there are many interviews about that story. Please go on YouTube and find out how they did the rotating scene where Joseph Gordon-Levitt is kind of taking all those inert bodies through the hotel lobby. One thing I noticed about Inception is that there is hardly any blood in it, and then I realized, there's hardly any blood in any of Christopher Nolan movies. He doesn't. There's no like bloodshed. Even when people are dying, like you'll see like a patch of blood come up on like a shirt or something, but there's no like flying blood, despite all the guns that are being used in this film.
Yeah. He's a very PG-13 friendly director.
Oppenheimer को क्या rating मिली है लेकिन?
I think it's an R-rated film.
इसको R-rated film मिली है ना? Correct. So that's interesting.
I'm pretty sure that's for language. Unless he's showing the whole Hiroshima bomb thing.
Who knows? We'll find out when we watch the film in a couple of weeks. I also really like that this film makes commentary on who are the bad guys, and the bad guys are people who control the electricity. Energy suppliers of the world are the bad guys. So
one of the aspects that bothers me in Tenet is like, apart from Sator, all the bad guys are faceless people. Like Kobol is also a faceless entity.
Yeah.
And I was just, that bugs me because in the final act of Tenet, when they are shooting willy-nilly in this open field, forward a protagonist, backward protagonist, whatever. I'm like, who are you shooting? Like, what is at the stake? I'm confused about geography. I'm confused about your primary target. I'm confused about who's who in the same moment. Everybody's in the bloody mask. Yes, it might look like, oh, tumko picture samajh mein nahi. Of course, because of these reasons, I did not understand the film.
The whole thing that Neil is actually that son who has come back in time and everything, and I was like, that didn't clock at all.
Not at all.
I must be stupid.
Poor young Neil. I did not even see his face in that entire picture, and you are asking me to connect with that kid and that mother's relationship. How?
Yeah.
I don't even know poor child's face.
Coming back to Inception, a great freaking film. It is one of the best films in Nolan's filmography, in my opinion. मतलब हम कौन ही होते हैं जज करने वाले, but मेरे opinion में तो बहुत ही बड़ी फिल्म है, बहुत ही बढ़िया फिल्म है. And one of my favorite lines in the movie is, "You mustn't be afraid to dream a little bigger, darling."
Bigger, darling.
I love it. And also one of my favorite quotes that I have written. I have a list of quotes from his movies also. True inspiration is impossible to fake. I mean, that's, it can also be said that it's a movie about filmmaking, right?
It is.
That's been said about that film.
So much has been said about that. Nolan, like Leo DiCaprio's character Cobb is the Nolan substitute.
Yeah.
In the film, he's the director. Architect is the production designer.
Architect is the production designer.
Forger is the actor. Right, fantastic. So what is Arthur? Arthur is screenwriter.
Another film that then directly connects to Inception, and it's been said that was the blueprint sort of in a manner of speaking to Inception, in that the lead characters' names are also the same. No, not the lead characters' names. One of the characters' names is also the same. There's a Cobb in Inception, and there's also a Cobb in Following, which is the first feature film that Christopher Nolan made. It came out in 1998. It is fully black and white. And when I watched Following, I didn't realize I was watching a later cut, because I said ये तो पूरी linear film है, and then I realized I was just watching the wrong cut, because it's not linear. And then he's cut it up and put it in a linear fashion, So to say कि देखो है तो सिंपल ही फिल्म, तुम ही कंफ्यूजिंग बनाते हो मेरी फिल्मों को, मैं तो सिंपल फिल्म ही बनाता हूँ. Following you can watch on YouTube. It is a black and white film that Christopher Nolan made. Thoughts on that film, Vinit?
I loved it.
Yeah.
I saw it pretty later. I think I
Yeah,
saw
same.
that film after Inception, when Nolan has become this huge director. So I was just going back to some of the stuff that I hadn't seen already, because I've been watching. The first film I saw of Nolan was Batman Begins. When I saw Following, it's like the blueprints. It's like the first draft of Inception for me.
For me, it felt like the first draft of Memento.
True.
Right? Because it's the same, it's like you see a protagonist in black and white talking on the phone, there's a monologue, you hear a voiceover as well, there's photos involved, there's like memorabilia involved, and like there are two people involved, and one person is slightly more at a position of power, so that person is manipulating the person who's not in a position of power, and this person doesn't quite understand what's happening to him. For me, it felt like this was the film that he wanted to make, and then he heard Memento Mori, the story his brother was writing, Jonathan Nolan, and then put them together and made Memento.
What you're saying is absolutely right. Like Following helped him get the screenplay of Memento right, I guess. Majorly it benefited. He understood, like, because he already tinkered with the non-linear narrative, and the protagonist and antagonist relationship are pretty much similar. So all those parallels are absolutely correct. In terms of concept, in terms of idea, like in terms of thesis, I think Following and Inception draw parallel solely because you want to understand what is most valuable for a person. When he goes into breaking into other people's houses, he's not stealing anything material, anything of value. He's trying to
disrupt memory.
Trying to disrupt what is personal. And there is a line that he says, like, people don't realize they have something until they lose it.
Until they lose it, yeah. And there's also a safe, right? There's a safe in Inception that they're trying to break into. There's also a safe in Following that the protagonist is trying to break into.
Yeah, absolutely. So at a concept level, it draws parallel with Inception. At a narrative level, it has more parallels with Memento than Inception. Especially in the second half of Following, when it turns into some sort of a manipulative murder.
With the woman is also lying to him, and she's married to a guy who's involved with the wrong guy. Well, not married, dating a guy who's involved with the wrong guys, and then
So in that sense, it's like there are two films, central ideas that Following has, and he has been luckily able to explore both of them completely and holistically. So in that sense, Following is a great, it's one of the best first indie debut directorial feature by any director.
For those who haven't watched Following, it is only about an hour and 10 minutes, and it is on YouTube, but just like make sure which version you are watching. Both versions are okay to watch. I don't think Christopher Nolan minds whichever version you're watching, but there is an actual version which is non-linear, and then there is an edited version where scenes have been chopped up and then put together quite seamlessly. Like I couldn't even tell while I was watching it, put together in a linear fashion. मैं गलत तो नहीं बोल रही हूँ ना विनीत? Non-linear ही है ना film जिसको मैंने linear देख लिया है?
Original picture is non-linear. When he was making he was getting some sort of a distribution deal for the DVDs. So for that, he specifically cut the film linear and put those in the DVD release. But films that went to festivals and eventually got the
slam dance, etc. Yeah,
absolutely. Those are the original non-linear.
And then I realized that his now wife has been producing everything he has done. I didn't know that she was actually produced 100% of the things he's done. Emma. She produced Following as well.
Yes.
प्यार हो तो ऐसा फिर हर पिक्चर में डेड वाइफ आ जाती है, लेकिन इतनी तो सपोर्टिव वाइफ है लाइफ में तुम्हारी, इतनी बेहतरीन वाइफ है.
Still, he wants to murder her in every film.
He wants to murder the wife in every film. Speaking of murdered wives, we are coming to Memento. Naturally following. अभी तक हम रिवर्स जा रहे थे. Tenet के बाद हम Inception गए. Inception के बाद हम Following गए. अब हम Following से forward शुरू करते हैं एक बार फिर से. And it makes sense that we are going to start the forward journey with Memento. Genre defining, path breaking film. How we allowed Ghajini to happen, I don't know. I don't have memories of that time, clear memories of that time, because I wasn't very familiar with Christopher Nolan, as most of the country was not back then in India. How we've allowed Amir Khan to do this twice. He has done this with Ghajini and he did it with Dhoom 3, where he copied the Prestige. Ridiculous how this has been permitted to happen 2 times. Memento, I love it. And again, exposition, right from the first one, there somebody saying, "Oh, it's like going backward." So within 10 minutes, you're like, "I see your trick, but I'm really fucking enjoying it."
It feels like when I look back now, I'm like when I saw the film for the first time, and the only reason I saw the film was I had no idea this was made by Nolan. Everybody was slamming and dunking on Gajini.
Hilarious.
Memento. Like, I want to know. I want to see that film now. Like, what is this whole hoo-ha about this picture? And when I saw it, I was in awe.
I haven't watched Gajini. Gajini copies it exactly?
There is an Indian way of telling that story. There is a quote-unquote non-linearity, if you can call it.
Yeah.
There are a lot of flashbacks and all.
Again, this was a short story that his brother was in the process of writing, and the short story actually got published after the movie came out.
Yeah.
But it's so sweet that he collaborates with his brother all the time.
I like this. It's like a perfect family business. You have a brother writer, you have a wife producer.
How am I supposed to heal if I can't feel time? What a great freaking line. It's a very, very dialogue heavy movie. There's lots and lots and lots and lots of talking. I have a question about Memento that I've not been able to understand. Now, obviously, for those who have not seen the movie, I'm just like, what are you watching this video for? It's incredible that the movie starts with the discovery of the body, and then the body comes alive, and then you're like, this person is going to get killed, and you're taking me backward from that point. Who does that?
Yeah.
Christopher Nolan does that. When he finds out the truth about the cop, Gamel, and Gamel tells him that you've actually killed your wife's murderer 1 year ago, and I have been using you for a year to carry out my murders and make money on the side. Then you get a shot of him, and then he finds out that he actually killed his wife who survived that attack, but he gave her the extra insulin shots. And then we see a shot of his wife laying on his chest, and on the chest is the tattoo, "I did it," right? Which is saying that he's actually killed the murderer. Then in the rest of the film, we don't see that tattoo anywhere. In fact, at one point, Natalie even asks him what goes here, and someone asks him what goes here, and he says, probably I'm going to write the name of the person when I do it, when I kill it, or whatever. I don't understand where that scene fit in the whole timeline. Maybe I'm missing
what I believe, that 1 year period in between where we don't see between the actual murder of the killer, that
Lenny is the protagonist.
I think after the first murder, he does writes it. I did it, but then maybe Gamut gets it taken off.
Gamel.
So that Gamel, sorry, he gets it taken off so that he can carry out these murders progressively.
So he removes his tattoo.
Yeah, he gets it removed from him. That's what I believe. Might be wrong.
Maybe he's again misremembering that moment, or we are shown that snapshot of that moment because when we see the moments of those flashbacks, we're not really seeing them from the point of view of Lenny, because Lenny doesn't remember doing any of this. No. This is like the movie breaks the fourth wall and shows you these moments. They're not from the point of view of anyone. The Gamel is just telling him these stories, and Gamel is telling him that you actually killed your wife or whatever, but he doesn't remember doing that. But the movie shows us those scenes of him doing that. So the movie is breaking the fourth wall. So maybe, I don't know why that's
definitely that specific aspect when he says that you killed your wife, giving her that's Gamel completely lying to Lenny.
Really?
Yeah, he doesn't understand, because Lenny is very sure that he remembers everything up until the accident.
Yeah.
So his memory of those events is pretty solid. It's the aftermath that is fuzzy for him.
But I don't think Gamel is lying, and Lenny actually did kill his wife. In fact, you know that scene is there, no? When Sammy Jenkins is in the mental asylum, and then someone passes him by, and for a split second you see that it's not Sammy Jenkins, it's actually Leonard sitting in that chair.
Yes,
it's like a microsecond shot, and then you don't even see it unless you know it's there about an hour, 30 minutes into the film.
Absolutely.
So he did kill his wife and ended up in the mental asylum, and then he's escaped the mental asylum when the black and white sequences have begun. So right before that, he's escaped the mental asylum, right?
To sort of conclude, in a sense, like what is going on in the film, the central aspect is still that he doesn't want to get out of the cycle. That's the only motivation he has to continue whatever his remainder of the life is.
To live. His only motivation to continue living is to find this John G and kill him. And he doesn't want to accept to himself that he's already done it.
Exactly. So what is the true nature of his crime?
that he himself murdered his wife and ended up going to this asylum and now on this revenge spree, or is the memory that is fed by Gamble to Lenny in order to make sure that even though he has murdered the actual perpetrator, he still keeps on believing that he's still out there in the world. So in a sense, like this film, like many of one of the common aspects of Nolan's filmography is how do you differentiate between objective reality and your perception of reality? And Lenny has sort of almost got his perception of reality to be his objective reality. And he is very much happy to live in that. So anything that deviates from that narrative is a person he cannot trust. And Gamel, I don't know he's telling the truth or he's just lying to him.
He is, because the movie shows you that shot of Sammy Jenkins sitting in the thing, and then you see that it's actually Lenny sitting in the chair. So Sammy Jenkins probably was not even a real character.
Probably not even a real character. So it allows the film to have these 2-3 different interpretations. Who do you believe more? Do you believe Gamble more or do you believe Lenny more? But even if you believe Lenny more, which of his story would you believe more? The script, the narrative has this a nice interplay between you as an audience deciding what is the objective reality and which one is the
subjective reality.
Subjective, or you say your interpretation of your own life and your own memories. And memories are faulty.
Yeah, and that's what the film is also telling you, memories are faulty, especially in that one scene when Natalie shows him a picture of her boyfriend and he has a mustache. And then he wakes up in the middle of the night and he picks up that photo again. He doesn't have a mustache. And then when you see the photo again, he has a mustache.
Yeah.
So the film is only, again, that's the film breaking the fourth wall, because nobody is saying that, अरे इसकी मूंछ कहाँ गायब हो गई, वो film ही आपको दिखा रही है, देखो इसमें मूंछ नहीं है. So the film is only saying memories are faulty. You cannot, and then in one dialogue, Lenny also says that memories change and you can't really trust memories, right? Yeah.
Absolutely. That's why he makes all the photographs and all the notes and all the titles, because objective, those are facts.
Yeah.
You can conclude stuff once you evaluate facts enough. Ultimately, facts also based on what he has seen and perceived. And a person with such faulty memory, how conclusive are his facts? So every single thing that he's basing his life off of, how much can you trust? How much can he trust himself? I'm saying it for the first time, so I don't know how it's going to come across. But it feels like a very civilized version of Joker living in this world, trying to just murder because he believes in a truth that he himself has.
I understand that. I see that. In a fashion, the director's signature is so strong in this one as well, because you see very similar shots of his wife as you see of Mal in Inception. Very similar shots of like her back sitting at a desk where you can't really see her face, or you see her looking just sad and upset. I think she's got a similar kind of short bob like kind of I have right now. Just like sad looking, really, really pretty woman who's like unhappy in her life, and very similar visualizations of the wife character in both these films. There's a really nice video of Christopher Nolan explaining this movie just very nicely, where he draws a hairpin structure on a chalkboard and says, this is the structure of the film. It's a hairpin. This is moving forward, this is moving backward, and this is the end of the film where the forward and the backward meet. Because I imagine when Memento released, again, I imagine everybody must have been like, what is this? And then now if you watch Memento, you'll be like, yeah, it makes sense. Because now we've watched enough Christopher Nolan films to understand how these kind of movies are made where you're jumping through time and space constantly. Any final thoughts on Memento?
I think it's a great movie.
Fantastic film. And I love that there's no redemption in the film. No one is to be redeemed. They're all bad people. There is no redemption. Including fucking Lenny. They're all bad people.
Yeah. Absolutely. When he did not have those studio shackles, he was able to take those morally tainted characters and tell their stories. And it was beautiful to watch it was beautiful to watch in Memento. He did that a couple of times more, but then of course he let go of that aspect of his storytelling.
Now, Memento, I also think, basis on what we've seen about Oppenheimer so far in terms of the promotional things, is closest to Oppenheimer in that he is again in Memento and Oppenheimer seems
Yeah.
to be exploring survivor's guilt. Obviously,
Yes.
famously, Oppenheimer's character had survivor's guilt about creating the atomic bomb that led to the Hiroshima and Nagasaki bombings, and he himself was like, "What have I done?" And that's why he advocated against creating the hydrogen bomb. And here
Yeah.
also in Memento, there's the black and white narrative and the color narrative. And Nolan recently, in interviews, has said that in Oppenheimer, I've again written in first person, which is something that he said in Memento as well. But in Oppenheimer,
Yes.
he said, I've never done it before. But he literally said that when he was promoting Memento back in the day, that this is a first person kind of film where one reality is subjective, one reality is objective. And he seems to be
Yeah.
exploring that in Oppenheimer, obviously on a much bigger scale. And now everyone in Hollywood wants to work with Christopher Nolan. So everyone's taken on these roles, and it's like a huge star cast.
I'm being an engineering student and being a science nerd. The history is not lost on me.
Yes.
The history of the actual event. So I'm really excited to watch how he's going to tackle this. And I'm deliberately trying to avoid as much as possible all the promotional material that is out on YouTube. I'm not reading any interviews or watching any interviews. There are definite concerns, but I'll speak about those in depth once we discuss other of his films. But the things that I'm most excited about, apart from the regular Nolan thing, that was high.
The IMAX experience.
And everything. Apart all of that, it's a character study for sure. And Nolan hasn't done, he's a very plot and concept driven filmmaker.
That's right. That's
So
right.
Oppenheimer makes him go back to his earlier roots of telling a character study.
Yeah.
And that is what I'm super excited about.
I mean, aside from Batman movies, he's not made a titular film about a character, no? With the title, character's name in the title.
It's every single film after that, like be it Inception, Interstellar, Dunkirk, Tenet, everything are concept first film.
They're all concept films. Batman also is a concept film at the end of the day. It is a superhero movie. And Cillian Murphy finally getting to play the title role. This is his 6th film with Christopher Nolan. Very, very excited. He's like, those cheekbones, man, those cheekbones. मैं बस उन्हीं को देखती रहूंगी पूरे time पे. We'll speak more about Oppenheimer. We'll do another deep dive into specifically Oppenheimer once we've both had a chance to watch the film. Another connection from Oppenheimer straight goes to Dunkirk, because that is the only other historical he has made based on true life events. Another anti-war film, another film talking about the futility of war. Dunkirk is amazing. The more you watch it, the more you find in it. Obviously, with every Christopher Nolan film, you watch it like 6 times and you find 60 new things every single time. But Dunkirk was such a fulfilling experience for me, because it also was, like, in a manner of speaking, not challenging me too much. It's mostly linear, even though he can't help himself. He has to do 3 different timelines, 1 hour, 1 day, 1 week thing. But it's mostly linear. The most approachable film I think he's made.
I had a great time watching the film in the cinemas. I saw it twice on IMAX.
Yeah.
One of the best cinematic experiences, I would say. Unfortunately, I'm not a big fan of Dunkirk.
Acha, why is that?
I come out of the film and I forget the film. But when I'm watching the film, I'm completely with the film. Maybe it's a personal thing. I'm more into characters, and especially films that are based on mood, psyche of a character and how they behave in the world. All props to Nolan. Like, the reason I respect him a lot is he's trying to push the narrative boundaries, cinematically speaking. If it's his way of telling you a story where you don't need a central protagonist, where you don't need to understand everybody or know everybody's name.
Yeah.
You don't need to quote unquote relate with your characters, and still can tell a story that will sweep you off your feet. He has been able to been very successful as far as Dunkirk is concerned. But my problem is, once I've seen the film, I'm done with the film. I don't live with it.
Because you don't know anyone, you don't know any names, you don't know any characters.
Yeah, it's a very good depiction of the event. I wouldn't say there's a video on a YouTube channel called History Buff, which has pointed out lots of historical inaccuracies in Dunkirk. So but apart from that, I was swept away. I was swept away with the sound of the film, the technical aspects of the film, 10 out of 10. Is it the film that if somebody asks me to, let's watch it again, and I'll be most excited about it? Not really.
Really? I really like watching it again, because I know it's a war film and there's like lots of death and suffering in the film, but it's comforting because it's like one of the films that he's made that ends on a positive note. that ends in hope for humanity, right? Because humanity
Yeah.
comes together and people with no means come together and save all these 300,000 soldiers stranded on a beach. Then Kenneth Branagh stays back and he says, I will help the French also evacuate. Because it ends on a happy note, right? Also, the other argument can be made that maybe it is a pro-military film, and because when they get back, Harry Styles, वो scene जब वो train
Yeah.
रुकता है, वो newspaper मांगता है, फिर beer देने आ जाते हैं लोग, and people are happy and celebrating. So that was also a conversation around the film, that it is pro-military, and it's actually saying that, what our people did was the right thing to do.
You generally end up with that when it comes to Second World War films, because it's arguably the last just war that we had. It was the war that was fought for the good cause. This was a necessary war. So in that case,
but war always ends up in death and destruction of people who don't deserve it, right?
Yeah. That's the consequence of every single war.
Yeah.
So in that case, if they celebrated, I don't much blame Nolan. He didn't do it. He didn't overdo it like Spielberg does it most of the time.
With war, na?
Yeah. But overall, again, as I said, fantastic film when I'm watching it.
For me, like the first shot of the film really stays with me and always has stayed with me the most is when that soldier is just running through the streets. Before we even get to the beach, they're running through the streets because he's walking through the streets because he just wants to take a dump.
Yeah.
Human.
Yeah.
He's reducing the whole situation down to this one man. He just wants to shit. He's not being able to do it because कभी pamphlet गिर रहे हैं, कभी guns बज रही हैं, कभी कोई बेचारा soldier किसी दूसरे soldier को bury कर रहा है, and we don't actually ever find out that if he gets to take that dump or not.
I feel so bad for
Barry Keoghan.
No, I always forget the name of this actor, and I love this actor. The pilot.
Bane from Batman.
Yeah.
Mr. Eames. We only now think of Christopher Nolan characters that he has played. But yes, I know who you're talking about.
We did not get to see his face till the last scene of the film.
And in Bane, you never get to see his face. In Batman.
It's superstar.
Tom Hardy.
Superstar in your film. And Tom, come, we'll make a film together.
But he gets one lovely shot in the end with the plane burning in the background, and as he jumps off on the beach, that's one like cinematic shot which he gets to do in the end. I'm like, Christopher Nolan करा रहे हैं तो आपको जो करना है आप कर लो. But यार मेरे को तो Dunkirk बड़ी पसंद है. But I understand what you're saying also कि कोई कैरेक्टर नहीं है और कोई नाम नहीं है जो आपको याद रहेंगे. Kenneth Branagh मुझे बहुत पसंद है. हम माइकल केन को बहुत वो बोलते हैं कि he is kind of like his lucky charm and he's in everything that Christopher Nolan does, but like Kenneth Branagh was also in everything that Christopher Nolan does, right? This one, Tenet, Oppenheimer. Have you seen Belfast, by the way, speaking of Branagh?
No, I have not.
It's so good. Again, it's the anti-war movie and it's about like it's semi-autobiographical. It is beautiful.
I did not like Kenneth Branagh in Tenet.
In Tenet?
It was very, very caricaturish, stereotypical version by that.
It really was. मैं drug dealer है, मैं weapons dealer है, मैं बुरा आदमी है, मैं ऐसा गोली मार दूंगा.
I don't know how big of a role his is in Oppenheimer. But he's playing Niels Bohr.
Yeah.
So I'm
was
super
an important
excited
character.
about. Jack Wade is playing Feynman. So that's another character that I'm excited about.
Rami Malek is in it, Florence Pugh, Emily Blunt, Matt Damon, Robert Downey Jr. It's like everybody just wants to be in a Christopher Nolan film and they will do whatever. Cillian Murphy even said in an interview, even though Cillian Murphy is the titular character, but he even said that Christopher Nolan wants me to stand in the background holding a surfboard in any of his films. I will do that also. Whatever he wants, I'm going to turn up for. Imagine seeing Cillian Murphy. And Cillian Murphy, you see him twice in Dunkirk. And ये मुझे बाद में चमका on my recent watch that you see him actually twice in the film. Second, the most of the chunk of it is when he's in the plane and the plane crashes and then he comes onto the boat and then he's shell-shocked, like literally shell-shocked. But then उससे पहले also, you've seen him in a boat when these boys are trying to climb the boat and he says, you're healthy boys, you can wait and then come later or whatever. अब हम Dunkirk तक पहुंच गए हैं. इसके आगे हमारे पास पता है क्या-क्या बचा है? हमारे पास Prestige बची है. Prestige again, it's so vintage. It's nothing like Christopher Nolan would make now. It is almost like cheesy in the way it approaches, because it's about magic and it's like the stage performance of magic. It's almost cheesy in the way it approaches science. Another Oppenheimer connection here. Oppenheimer, you will see the titular character and you also see Einstein, right? But in
Yeah.
here, you will see Tesla in Prestige, a fictionalized version of Tesla, played by freaking David Bowie of all people.
David Bowie.
Then you have Insomnia,
Yeah.
which is the least famous Christopher Nolan movie.
I have no idea when I think people talk about Christopher Nolan, nobody will mention his song.
Insomnia. We've got Interstellar that I would very much like to talk about, and we've got the Batman trilogy. How do you think
Yes.
we pause here now and we continue our conversation for another 1 hour and talk about the rest of them then?
Yeah, I think because the films that are still remaining to talk about require a good thought before we sort of get deep dived into it.
I am very excited
Especially,
to talk about Batman Begins.
trust me, I mean, there is so much to talk about Batman Begins. I'll hold my thoughts, but it's crazy how many people do not rate that movie.
Appreciate that film. It's a completely phenomenal film. Heath Ledger's performance aside, I think Batman Begins is the best Batman movie.
Yes. Let's hold our thoughts. We'll talk about it in detail in the next video.
Until then, y'all, please subscribe to my channel and please subscribe to Cinema Beyond Entertainment as well. Vinit has promised he's going to come up with more videos. So you subscribe here. We will talk about the rest of Christopher Nolan movies. This has been really great. And then we are going to build up to Oppenheimer and also talk about Oppenheimer in detail when we get to watch it. Vinit, thanks.
Excited for the next one.
Bye.
See ya.